Hey, good morning, everybody. First off, I want to start off by thanking you guys. Thank you for being part of our community here. Thank you for watching online. My prayer for you is that as we go through today's study within the Gospel of Mark, that you would have the opportunity to, number one, above everything else, to be able to spend time with Jesus. As you spend that time with Jesus, my secondary prayer is that whatever it is that we're learning today would just literally soak deep within your soul. I'm not very much interested in just giving you random facts of information. I want to give you transformation, and that's not something that I can do. Rather, I can just give you the information, and then you take that to Jesus and let him do the transformation. That's always the goal, folks, by the way, is to be transformed into the likeness of Christ. Now, that being said, I realize that today you guys are watching, and it is, in fact, May 3rd. So tomorrow is going to be, as for some of you Star Wars nerds, including myself, is May the 4th. So my hope is that tomorrow you celebrate accordingly, whether it's you watch Star Wars all day, or maybe you are blessed enough to go to a Star Wars event, or possibly Disneyland, or whatever the case is. Come on, who doesn't like to celebrate Star Wars, right? Anyway, that being said, today we get to go through the Gospel of Mark, and we've been going through this Gospel verse by verse just to understand what does it mean to become an apprentice of Jesus. And really, it all begins with who is Jesus? Like, what was he about? What was his mission? What was his goal? And at the same time, we get to know a secondary person, which is Mark. Mark, the author of the Gospel of Jesus, as he himself was not a disciple directly, meaning he wasn't there with Jesus. Rather, he came along in the story after Jesus had already gone to the cross and had resurrected. So he gets these first-hand accounts being told to him by Peter, possibly other disciples, and he begins to write these things down. One of these stories that we find out about, not only from the parables, which we kind of have to touch on for a second. If you guys have, if you haven't, again, you can go back and watch these. And I encourage you to go on our Facebook, which is First Christian Church of Ramona, only because on Facebook we had the wonderful and amazing Bill Doctrum, my mentor, who came and preached. So what he preached on, though, has very much to do with the subject that we're talking about today. He preached upon the farmer, the parables of Jesus, the farmer that threw out the seed and it just grew, and he didn't really worry about it, but it just grew, right? The other one is that there's somebody who threw out mustard seed in their garden, and that mustard seed, although the tiniest of seeds, which isn't true, grows up to be the biggest of plants, which also isn't true, and it takes over everything. Well, yeah, it's a weed. So it's one of those, if you're going to go gardening, don't stick weeds in the garden. Jesus was obviously trying to get people's attention, saying the kingdom of God is like, well, it overtakes everything. Thank you, Bill, for teaching us that, because that literally sets us up for this story. Now, previous to this, we went through the story of Jesus stilling the storm, and already that also blended very well with the parables that Jesus had just taught about. And I kind of want to highlight the end of that story, because at the end of Jesus telling his disciples, let's go to the other side, which is a terrible idea, and he goes into this Gentile territory. Sure enough, they're in the middle of the lake. There's a big storm. That storm is actually driven by the demonic presence. So Jesus literally is woken up by the disciples. They're freaking out, going, do you not care if we're going to drown or not? And what is Jesus' response? He just calmly, half awake, tells the storm, quiet, get down, stay down. And the whole sea is now clear. The storm is gone. It is just that weird calmness. And of course, all the disciples are now hiding with one another, saying, who is this that's in the boat? Because only God could control the winds and the sea. So then what does that make him? And now they're more scared of him than they were of the storm. The reason why I bring that up, because you are going to see the exact same pattern repeating itself now in Mark chapter 5. So let's go through that story, and then I'll kind of help us do a little bit of a reflection towards the end. They came to the other side of the sea, to the region of the Gerasenes. As soon as he got out of the boat, a man with an unclean spirit came out of the tombs and met him. He lived in the tombs, and no one was able to restrain him anymore, not even with a chain, because he often had been bound with shackles and chains, but had torn the chains apart and smashed the shackles. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Notice that, by the way. No one was strong enough to subdue him. They gave up. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and knelt before him. And he cried out with a loud voice, "What do you have to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, before God, don't torment me." For he had told him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." "What is your name?" Jesus asked. Jesus referring to the man with the unclean spirit still. "My name is Legion," he answered him, "because we are many." And he begged him earnestly not to send them out of the region. A large herd of pigs was there, feeding on the hillside. The demons begged him, "Send us to the pigs so that we may enter them." So he gave them permission. And the unclean spirit came out and entered the pigs. The herds of about 2,000 rushed down the steep banks into the sea and drowned there. The men who attended them ran off and reported it to the town and to the countryside, and people went to see what had happened. They came to Jesus and saw the man who had been demon-possessed, read this slowly, sitting there, dressed, and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Those who had seen it described to them what had happened to the demon-possessed man and told about the pigs. And they began to beg him to leave the region. Now they're asking Jesus, "Leave, please leave." As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged him earnestly that he might remain with him. Jesus did not let him, but told him, "Go home to your own people and report to them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So he went out and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him and how they were all amazed. The word of the Lord. What's going on in this story? One, it is one of my favorites, okay? I have a few favorites within the gospel just because it's one of those stories that plays in my mind over and over again. This is one of them. Why is it one of my favorites? Well, first off, we kind of want to be aware of what is really going on in this story. It tells us that Jesus, if you guys remember, previous story, Jesus says, "Hey, let's go across the lake to this area, which is already in the eastern side of the Jordan, which is also a terrible idea." Why? Because that's Gentile territory. Now, let me explain what I mean. If we go back in history, back in the days of Pompey, around 63 AD. Before that, never mind. It was before. Before, so it would be CE or BC, whatever terminology you want. Okay, there you go. So it's before, right? Around 63, Pompey ends up coming into the region, and what he did was something very interesting. He kind of cleared everything. Now, when I say the word cleared, it's not just he demolished all the buildings. No. Pompey goes into the region that is heavily Jewish. What he decides to clear the entire region of any sort of Jewish influence. That's including people who are Jewish. So he goes into this region that normally would have had a larger Jewish population. He just removes them, right? He doesn't kill them. He just has them removed. And then he kind of sets up this kind of like Gentile wonderland, because it's only Gentiles. It's whatever the Gentiles are practicing, pantheon of gods, your real Roman kind of, culture. So this is what he does. He removes all the Jewish culture. In its place, he establishes the, more of a Romanesque kind of, Hellenistic culture that's there. In the process, he also creates these things called 10 cities, which were 10 unincorporated, kind of loosely incorporated cities, otherwise known as the Decapolis. Deca meaning 10. So it's these 10 cities that are in this region. Jesus, again, when he started with the disciples, said, "Let's go to the other side of the lake." And they already said, "This is a bad idea. We're going in the middle of the night. We're crossing this." And of course, there's a storm. So it's the "I told you so, I told you so." And then they get there. And what are they met with? Here, Jesus finally gets to the shore. And here comes a man, not walking, but running aggressively, such as like when we see on the news, somebody attacking someone else. That's what's going on. You have this aggressive, angry, very psychotic, kind of like freak out kind of person, doesn't even act like a human being, very much like an animal, is now running and approaching Jesus and the disciples. Now, what you would normally expect with someone that is out of their mind, especially one, we look at his description, and immediately Mark goes into that. He's got shackles, but they're all broken. He's bleeding everywhere from him cutting himself with stones and stuff like that. He's walking around day and night, screaming, yelling, these, kind of not words, but just sounds of agony and pain. And at the same time, he's running around the tombs. Why is he in the tombs? Well, there's several laws that kind of come into play if this region had any Jewish influence at all. When somebody has gotten to the point like this gentleman that is so demonically possessed, he can't hang out with society because of the fact that he's already doing a lot of just unclean things. Which brings me to my point. Jesus just walked into a region where this whole scenario is already beyond unclean. Now, to understand how things work when it comes to being unclean, in the Jewish mindset, because I cannot assume everybody knows what I'm talking about, so let's go through this. In the Jewish mindset, there is a category called holy, right? God is the only one that lives there. That's the holy, right? Next to the holy is this thing called clean, where, those who are following the law or things or, objects that are purified, they're clean, right? Then there's the unclean section. The unclean section can be made clean, right? But nothing goes beyond that. And it's kind of like the progression should be going this way towards the holy, but nothing goes into the holy, only God is there. So things can be clean and then become unclean. They can become clean again through, the rituals or ceremonies or whatever religious practices there might be in Judaism. And then there's a whole nother category called unholy. Unholy is where Satan and his, demons, that is their category. And there is nothing that brings the unholy, this direction. Rather, it is just, there it is. Why do I bring that up? Because there are certain things that make a person who might be clean, unclean, and the direction going that way is not good. Here's what I mean. In our story, Jesus walks up and there's already one, it's a Gentile man. So it's just by virtue of him living his life and that's not following the Jewish law, already makes him unclean for being a Gentile. Okay, step number one. Step number two, this man has been forced and marginalized to be so unfunctional with society, even the Gentile society, that they have decided he is going to stay in the region of the tombs. Why is that such a big deal? Well, for one, no one goes to the tombs. And then two, he's surrendered to the tombs because if you touch a dead body or anything associated with a dead body, in this case tombs, that's a whole nother level of unclean. And you have to clean yourself before you can even, and that's again, according to, I believe, Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy chapter 14. If you look at those two texts, they'll tell you that you can't hang out in tombs. You can't touch the tombs. You can't touch the region where dead bodies have been buried because you're unclean. So already we have a man who is Gentile, that's unclean. He's a tomb toucher. That makes him unclean. And then on top of that, as we read the rest of the story, we can kind of bring this facts a little to present. There were pigs, which means there were pig herders. So Judaism declares that pigs are considered unclean. That's the Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14. Pigs are considered unclean, meaning that they're not allowed to be eaten. They are not part of a Jewish diet. In fact, they are just, don't touch them, don't mess with them, right? The fact that we have herders of pigs is, well, then this whole thing, like the practice of herding pigs is already an unclean thing. But what matters here is that in the Roman view, for one, for Rome, at least soldiers that would be under the Roman region and legion, beef and or some sort of meat or protein was hard to come by. It wasn't as, like today, you just go to the market and buy whatever you want. No, so it was very hard to find any sort of meat that you could consume. Well, guess what? They don't care what kind of meat they eat, so pork is fine. The fact that there are 2,000 piggies involved in this, that means that somebody was raising them for the purpose of having them available and feeding the Roman government and the Roman soldiers. Does that matter? Of course it does, because that is a rare find and a rare thing to have. So the fact that you have meat means that you're probably well off. And 2,000 pigs randomly disappearing, that's a lot of money. So it's one of those, we're just piling it on. There's swine involved, tombs involved, a Gentile involved. And then on top of that, he's cutting himself because these shackles cannot control him because he's demon possessed. Oh, well, now we have demons in it. So it's the just added, I think we're up to like 4 or 5 different unclean situations that Jesus is intentionally walking into. So here Jesus arrives, he gets out of the boat. This man runs to him, and unlike a normal situation, which would be like dagger in hand or rock in hand or even a shackle that he's just about to destroy Jesus, which by the way, why is he running towards him? He's trying to stop Jesus from coming to the region because that means the gospel and the good news would arrive there. The storm couldn't do it, by the way. Notice again, the storm was highlighting Jesus' power above even creation. But the question always lands on who is this? And now we have Jesus showing up, and here's a created person who is running towards him, demonically possessed. And what's going on? He doesn't run up and hit Jesus. He runs and falls on his knees. Which to you and I might seem like, well, I guess that makes sense. No, sit with that for a second. That means that Jesus is the superior, because you don't fall on your knees before anyone unless they are worthy of worship or of honor. This Gerasene demoniac, the demons know who this is. And there is no contest. It's not the let's fight him, let's try to stop him. It's the, this is the Son of God, hold on. And they fall to their knees. Can I get an amen? As they fall to their knees, now it's something that is very, very interesting. Now, if you guys read with me, it says night after night, verse 5, he would run among the tombs and on the mountains, and he would always be crying and cutting himself with stones. Again, the demonic is causing him to self-harm, which is normal for the demonic. Why? Because the demons don't care about human beings. They only care about destruction and death, because that's what their master does. So when he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and knelt before him, and he cried out with a loud voice, "What do you have to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" First off, there are so many things that this demon is trying to say to try to get the upper hand on Jesus. Number one, he runs to Jesus, falls on his knees, and immediately says, "What do you business with me?" That's one, very forward and very brash. And it's the, "Oh, excuse me," right? But that's ultimately what he's saying. Jesus, why are you here? What business do we have? This demon already knows the plan. He knows that at one point there's going to be a judgment, and then there is going to be torment for the demonic. He knows this, and he sees Jesus going, "Oh no, is this the time that my torture begins?" So what does he do? He first off says who Jesus is. He goes, "What do you have to do with us?" Notice the term, not Son of God, Son of the Most High God. Most High God is a term very specific to Judaism. It's the name of Israel, Israel's God, which makes sense. He is the Most High God. He's the only God. But here, the demonic is acknowledging to Jesus, "You are the Son of the Most High God," which is a very Gentile way of saying Son of God. So this Gentile man, which is out of his mind, being controlled by the demonic, runs to Jesus and says, "I know who you are." And there was this weird belief that if you knew the name of someone, you could control them. And so here's him trying to get the upper hand, going, "I know who you are. I know who you are. I can tell you what to do." No, you can't. No, you don't. "What do you have to do with me, Son of the Most High God? I beg you before God," which, by the way, swear to God is what he's asking. It's just ironic, because it's like, you want me to swear to God? Yeah, we don't swear to God. Thank you. Secondly, he goes, "I beg you before God, don't torment me." So he knows what's going to happen in the future, and he's wondering, is this what's happening now? So instead, this demon is not trying to, I don't acknowledge who Jesus is. No, he's acknowledging who Jesus is. He's just saying, "I'm trying to find some mercy here before you just completely obliterate me into non-existence. Don't do that yet. Can I have another option?" He's literally asking Jesus for mercy. "I beg you before God, don't torment me," for he told him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." By the way, when it comes to gospel stories, it's not A, B, C, and D, okay? It's A, D, C, B. It's like it jumps around. Get over it. That's just how the gospel writers wrote back in the day. So here you're saying, oh, so the demon is out. It will be out. Mark just mentioned that first. But then we go back into Jesus asking the question, "What's your name?" Which means the demon is still there. Doesn't mean that Jesus cast him out and came back. Rather, it's this isn't an order. He will cast out the demon, you will see. But for right now, he's like, what's your name? Jesus notices asking the command, what is your name? And they ask him, my name is Legion. Threat number 2. Number 1 was, I know your name and I can manipulate you. No, you can't. Threat number 2 is, oh, we are Legion. Who's we? We? Yeah. Them, I guess? Yes. By the way, this doesn't mean that there are multiple demons. There's certain things that we read into this we're not supposed to. There's not multiple demons as individuals. It may be just one demon that has multiple associated with him. It might be that there are multiple. It's one of those either or. It doesn't matter. It's still the same thing. But here's the threat. Jesus, there's one of you and there are thousands of us. The word legion comes from the Latin word letio, which means there's about 5,600 or somewhere between 5,000 to 6,000, which normally would be associated with Roman legions. However, we're not told how many there are, and don't assume that it's how many pigs there are. That's one of those, don't get into the numbers there, just acknowledge the fact that there are many. And remember what we said earlier, nobody could control this man because there's many. Is it possible that one Jesus is enough to control many? Now you're getting it. So he says, well, my name is Legion, because we are many. And he begged him earnestly not to send them out of the region. Why is the demonic not asking, don't let me leave this area? Because he knows this area is my playground. This is where I can live freely, because this is Gentile territory that is not influenced by God and definitely not influenced by you. So it's just leave me here. So what is the request? A large herd of pigs was there feeding on the hillside. The demon begged him, send us to the pigs so that we may enter them. So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the pigs, and the herd of about 2,000 rushed down to the steep banks into the sea and drowned there. Why is there 2,000 pigs? I don't know. The number only matters in the sense of how much money is literally going down the drain. But notice, does Jesus command them to go to the pigs? No. Jesus just stood there and he said, ooh, I have an idea. Don't send me away. Send me to those. And he just picks the 2,000 pigs and says, I want to go to those. I want to go to those. By mercy, he goes, you can go to those. Notice, permission has to be granted because Jesus is the superior one. But this wasn't Jesus's idea. That was the demon's idea. He just said, yeah, sure, if that's what you want to do. Boom, they go to the pigs run back into the water. Most scholars wouldn't stretch it to this far, but I want to stretch it this far. Did you remember that it was the waters? Remember when they were on the Sea of Galilee and then the storm and everything? What was controlling everything? The demonic. The demonic wanted to kill the Son of God and the disciples, but God cast the demon out. Jesus cast the demon out. Why does that matter? Because here these herds of pigs possessed by demons are now jumping into the lake and returning. And the Jewish mindset was the lake is full of demons, so don't go into the lake. Yeah, this doesn't help the argument, does it? Here the pigs go and they are just killed. This is the part that's interesting. Read this with me. Then the men who tended to them ran off, right? So they go into the countryside. They go back to that little city called the Gerasene, right? Gerasa, there you go. They go to that town, which is not very far. It's within walking distance. They go, they start telling everybody, oh my gosh, the pigs are gone, the pigs are dead. And the guy that was demon possessed, he is completely normal. So then everyone starts to come by. Now they want to see what happened. Verse 15. They came to Jesus and saw the man who had been demon possessed, sitting, dressed in his right mind. I want you to paint this picture for a second. Imagine seeing a man covered in scars, covered in blood, just foaming at the mouth, just, chains everywhere, freaking out. His clothes are probably not even on him or barely on him. And he's just screaming to the sky and screaming to the ground and screaming at everyone else. His eyes are red shot. He is just, it's more animalistic than it is human. And then you show up just a few minutes later after seeing this man, and he is sitting on the ground. Eyes are white. He's calm. He has changed his clothes. He's wearing normal clothes now. Chances are he's probably, washed away the blood and the stains. and he just looks like a normal guy. What would you do? Interesting enough, this man and his deliverance was Jesus' goal. And where is he? Sitting at the feet of Jesus. This, folks, is literally the definition of being an apprentice and a disciple of Jesus. Delivered from the demonic, delivered from the culture, and set free. And where are you? At the feet of Jesus, calm and in the right state of mind. Verse 17, they then begged him to leave the region. We'll get to that in a second. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had demon-possessed begged him earnestly. Same language, but different result. What is he asking Jesus? Jesus, can I please come with you? Please let me be with you. And Jesus says no. But you're like, well, hold on, why? Chances are, because if he were to say yes to this man, he would be a Gentile in his crew that would be trying to reach out to the Jews. That's going to become very difficult if he's with them. But Jesus doesn't let this go. Instead, he turns around and gives a very specific command. Jesus did not let him, but told him this: go home to your own people and report to them how much, and notice the language, the Lord has done for you and the mercy he has had on you. Mark does it on purpose. Jesus is saying, I want you to go home. I want you to go to your people, and I want you to tell them what happened here. And I want you to tell them how the Lord blessed you and gave you mercy. And immediately, the following verse, just keep reading. So he went out and began to proclaim to the Decapolis, this is the 10 cities, the entire region, how much Jesus had done for him. By the way, this is Mark's very normal Markan way of winking at you going, see what I did there? Jesus and Lord are one and the same. Can we address the elephant in the room? The people of the Decapolis showed up. Pigs are drowned. This man that had run amok and just destroyed their, peace is now sitting there in his right mind, completely normal. In your opinion, what would matter more? Because here's the difference. One, notice Jesus does a miracle and nobody has faith, which should tell you something about miracles. Number two, what matters to Jesus versus what matters to everybody else? See, what matters to Jesus is, I could care less that 2,000 pigs lost their lives. Meaning, I don't care how much money was lost. I don't care that the pigs are gone. It's one of those, they're not even part of what you should be eating. So it's like, it's one of those like people who are like, oh no, don't step on a cockroach. You're like, does it matter? Just get rid of it. Like, no one cares about roaches. Yeah, it was the same thing. It was like, no, it doesn't matter. What is Jesus focused on? I'm focused on delivering this man and helping him find shalom in the kingdom of God. And now he is sitting at my feet. And what did Jesus just do? He said, I don't want you to hang out with me. I want you to go. Mind you, why does he do this? Because he got kicked out of the region. Jesus can't go into that area for now, but he's saying, I'm going to send my first missionary. A Gentile who was demon-possessed as a psychopath is now walking into the Decapolis, declaring who Jesus is. He gave him permission and said, go tell everybody. Go tell your family first, and then go tell everyone else. The first missionary to the Gentiles is a Gentile. You didn't notice that, did you? But here's the thing. The people in the region, what was their view? Their view was, I just lost 2,000 pigs. I lost millions of dollars. All for the sake of this guy to act normal? No, man. You know what, dude? Get out. Get out. They asked Jesus to get out. Why? Because they're more scared of Jesus now than they are of the man that was demon-possessed. Interesting. It's like the storm. Now the disciples were more scared of Jesus than they were of the storm. And the people in the region are more scared of Jesus than they are of the demon-possessed man who likes to cut himself and throw rocks and run around the tombs and potentially kill people? Oh. Now you're looking at that going, that doesn't make any sense, does it? No, it doesn't. But can I tell you this? This might bother you a little bit. We will always kick Jesus out because he messes with our lifestyle. You see, as a pastor, I've been a pastor for over 20 years. I've noticed a weird tendency in families. And that is some families will have like a family member, whether they're a drug addict or addicted to something, or whether they're just like the black sheep or they're like the constant problem, right? And it's almost like that's the norm, but they all complain about that family member. And then Jesus shows up. And then Jesus shows up in their lives. And now it's no longer an addictive thing. It's no longer a drug thing or alcohol thing or whatever. Choose the addiction that you want. We can be addicted to pride, by the way. So all of that is gone. All of a sudden, they're attending church. They're part of a small group. They're reading their Bible. They're speaking the language of peace and shalom and God renewing and restoring and forgiving and grace. And all of a sudden, those family members turn to pastors and churches going, hey, so I'm glad that you're helping my aunt, my uncle, my son, my grandpa, my whatever. But can you like back off? Can you just leave them be? Like you guys are messing with, and it's so helping your family member is not okay because it's an inconvenience to you because you were accustomed to this being the normal. And all of a sudden they're free and you're like, nah, that's messing with my whole, you're messing with things that I don't want you to mess with. So can you just let him be the weird one, or let her be the weird one, or let them be the weird one? Yeah, I've had conversations with people saying, please stop talking to my family member because they're getting into this Jesus thing and that's weird. And I just sit there going, okay, all right. That's your logic. You would much rather have a crazy person within your family than to have them have peace and sitting in the right man at the feet of Jesus. Man, that doesn't make sense. Can I tell you something? We have parts in our lives. Do you remember I told you there was like 5 layers of uncleanliness that Jesus was walking into? Jesus is interested in walking into the deepest, darkest, filthiest part of your life and setting that chaos into healing and order. But we will ask him to leave if he does that because now it's uncomfortable that you went into those places and changed something. That's why we like to be stuck in what we're stuck in. Let me ask you this. Are you okay with Jesus messing with your stuff? Are you okay with Jesus messing with your lifestyle, with your daily choices, with the way that you view life, the way that you view your spouse, your kids, your siblings, your parents, your cousins, relatives? Are you okay? Because here, going back to what Bill taught us, the kingdom of God is like a seed that is like a mustard seed, and you just put it in the garden and it just takes over everything. Yeah, that's exactly what Jesus does. And in this case, let me ask you, is there a part of your life that you need shalom in? Is there a part of your existence that there is a crazy person running around, hurting themselves, being chaotic, that you're saying, I actually do need Jesus to come by and deliver that out of my life? And let me feel that peace again. So, what matters to you? Is the loss what matters more to you? Or is it gaining Jesus that matters more to you? The decision is yours and it'll always be yours. My hope and prayer is that today you choose to become an apprentice of Jesus and that you're also okay with what it's going to cost you. Because heads up, it's going to cost you everything. But it's worth it. Grace and peace be with you. Also, may the 4th be with you. And remember, this is the way. We'll see you guys next week.